All right, guys, Sanch here. Welcome back to another episode on the Bodybuilding News Network, specifically another episode of Bodybuilding Today. We're going to be talking about the 2021 Wings of Strength Chicago Pro in the men's open bodybuilding category or division. We're going to talk about my predictions for the top 8. But before we get into that, I want to thank the promoter of this video, you guys. The channel has blown up in the last week, over 8,000 views this month, going from, it was something like 100 views a month to this. So from the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough for checking out this channel and consuming this type of content. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the athletes for us to actually get to know them beyond that surface level, learn about who they are, where they're from, what their competition history is, and then look at their physiques leading into the shows instead of just predicting what they're going to do based off of their name alone. So I want to thank you so much for supporting this channel. If you want to see more content like this, check out the channel and see other videos, and also consider subscribing. But let's go ahead and talk about the 2021 Chicago Pro in the men's open division. I want to give you my prediction for what I think is going to look like for the 1 through 4 and the 4 through 8. Not specifically in an order, but we might put them in order. Let's find out how the video goes. So I want to break these down into 4 different blocks: the upper body front double, the lower body front double, the back double upper, and the back double lower from the back. So it'll make sense once we start getting into it. What I have for my predictions is probably going to be Rolly Winkler versus Hunter Labrada for 1 and 2, and Hassan Mustafa versus Mohammed Shaban for 3 and 4. So that's going to be my prediction. It could get mixed up a little bit, but based off of what we've seen from the Hunter Labrada camp, I expect him to come in shape. If we look at these photos, this is from the Olympia right here that we can see. He didn't come in as good as shape as he wanted to, whereas if we look at Shaban and Mustafa, these are probably the best conditioning, the most conditioned versions of themselves we've seen to date. Now, literally the big wild card is going to be Rolly Winkler. So Rolly Winkler, we haven't seen on stage since early 2019, where he did that Yamamoto Cup and won. And then that was it. That's the last time we've seen him on stage. It's been a long time. We don't know if his midsection has maintained that small shape and structure that he worked so hard to maintain and get, because he had that big blown out midsection at that Arnold. It was the Ohio Arnold in 2018 or 2017. Got a lot of criticism for that midsection. He has corrected it, and now it's probably one of his strongest pieces of his physique, is having that small midsection. So it's really going to be interesting to see how he shows up. He hasn't been posting a lot of real physique updates besides the mirror shots where he just looks huge and vascular. That doesn't help out how we can interpret how he could potentially be placing and showing up in terms of condition and size. So when we look at these 4 shots from these competitors that I think are going to land in the 1 through 4 shot, I want to look at the chest, the arms, the midsections, and even a little bit of the lats. And when we look at the biceps, I mean, the big one that I feel like Hassan Mustafa's biceps actually jump out the most, right next to Rolly Winkler's. Hassan has that more peak, whereas Rolly just has that freaky mass. He's just one of the biggest guys in the IFBB, right next to Big Ramy. Debatably, I've seen on Dave Palumbo's podcast where he was talking with Rolly, saying that Dave actually thinks that Rolly is bigger. So it's kind of interesting to see and kind of interesting to hear those types of conversations. The biceps are going to be a big piece of the physique, but also you start looking in the fullness of the chest. You know, Rolly's really running away with that shot, and Shaban probably even coming in second with that just big, full, thick pieces of meat there on those pectoral muscles. Midsections are also, you know, I feel like Rolly takes that shot as well with that tiny midsection and the vacuum. for someone that size, it's just something you don't see very often. When we take a look at the lower body, when we look at the wheels, it also kind of spells the same kind of narrative. It would seem that Rolly Winkler has the better legs here, at least when we're looking at the separation as it goes into the posing trunks. I like to really see a lot of striations and cuts as we start to get higher up into the quadriceps. When people have that Rolly syndrome, where it's really washed out here, I don't like to see that. It's not very aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. Let me know in the comment sections below how you guys feel about that separation in the upper quads. Like, do you think that's something that's important? Do you think that it's something that's not important? Let me know. And then you also want to focus on the quad sweeps and the adductors and the abductors. How big are they? Are they developed? Are they well developed? Which person has the better ones? I feel like Rolly actually looks like he's lacking a little bit on these interior pieces, whereas everyone else looks like it's a lot more well built and established. Kind of an interesting way to look at it. With Shaban, his muscle, he just grew so much in the last year and a half, 16 months-ish, that a lot of the muscle just doesn't have that separation, the striations, the deep cuts as someone who potentially has had it a little bit longer, say like Rolly. And then there's also the freak factor of Hunter Labrada. How well is he going to come in condition? Because when you start to think about it, are the judges going to reward the bigger mass of Rolly Winkler's legs to match the rest of his physique? Or are they going to go with someone younger and more streamlined with that more classic look of open bodybuilding in a Hunter Labrada? It'll be interesting to see, but let me know in the comment sections below. Moving into the back department is where we separate the first and the seconds, the thirds and the fourths. Again, I feel like Rolly is making a solid statement. Although this photo is from 2019, yeah, 2019, it's still very impressive. A lot of this muscle is going to be maintained or even improved upon as we move towards that Chicago Pro 2 days out now. It'll be interesting to see, but even with these most recent shots, Hunter's not so much here from the 2020s, but Hassan Mustafa and Mohammed Shaban, very recent in the last 3 months here, the last 2 months actually. So this is what we can expect to see from these gentlemen in the forms of muscle mass. But again, I want to just keep coming back to that conversation. Are they going to go for the mass in that just raw muscle aesthetic, big, full, jacked muscle? Or are they going to go for the class, that beautiful symmetry, flowing muscle, nothing too freaky? Are they going to go with the freak factor, or are they going to go with something more classic, more aesthetically pleasing? And lastly, when we look at the glutes and hamstrings, this one, it's definitely going to be between Hunter Labrada and Rolly. The mass in these legs and the hamstrings, the separations as well, and then even the glutes development. Now Shaban's no slack for those glute development. Very, very well developed glute muscles and hamstrings to match, also calves. But does that overall physique, does everything culminate into a first or second place against this level of competition, this caliber of a lineup? It's definitely really going to come down to it. I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about Shaban? Do you think Shaban has what it takes to beat out a Rolly? Do you think he has what it takes to beat out a Hunter? He's beaten out Hassan Mustafa before, so I feel like there's a conversation there for Shaban having third. But could he win? Could he get second? Let me know in the comments below. So that is my prediction for the top four. Probably going to be a Rolly Hunter versus a Hassan and Mohammed. So Mustafa and Shaban, or Labrada and Winkler. Those are probably how it's going to land. In my opinion, of course, in my opinion. When we think about the 5 through 8, 5, 6, yeah, math is hard. When we think about the 5 through 8, this is how I think it's going to line up. We're going to have Max Charles versus Matt Koba, potentially, and then Justin Mackey versus Joe Mackey. Now, I am going to have my dark horses hop in here at the very end, so this could really go up in flames based off these dark horses I'm going to have. But I feel like Max Charles has done enough in his career and even in the competitive season so far to be inching into that first call out when we have such high caliber athletes like a Hassan Mustafa, like a Rolly Winkler, like a Hunter Labrada and Shaban as well. He has what it takes to get into there. It just depends on if anyone's going to be slipping. I talked about it in the original video of the overview of the open lineup. Go check that out on the channel. But Max Charles has a very flowing physique. Nothing is overgrown. Some people have said that his legs are undergrown, but that's for another video. He has a very well-flowing physique. It's very aesthetically pleasing, and I feel like it has just enough mass to beat out these other three competitors. Very small waists, as you can see here. All three of these guys have small waists. They have appropriate biceps, and even in the chest department, they do have developed enough chest muscle there to fight with these big boys in the open class. But I feel like Max Charles has what it takes to get this 5th place spot, or even potentially knock out someone like a Hassan if they don't come in better conditioning than they have in previous shows. Looking at the wheels from the front, I don't think that there's really much of a conversation. Max Charles has much larger legs, but it will come down to the conditioning, at least from the front. We'll talk about the back in a second here, but from the front, he has the size, but he was lacking that conditioning at the 2020 Olympia where he placed 11th. So there will be some room for maybe a Justin Mackey or even a Matt Koba, for a Matt Koba to potentially knock that out, because look at the conditioning that Matt Koba has brought. Justin Mackey is no slouch to conditioning, and then I've also heard through his sponsor Fuad Abiad with the Hostile supplements that he has made some serious improvements in the wheel department. So it'll be interesting. Like I always say, it'll be interesting to see how these gentlemen show up at this Chicago Pro. But let me know, what do you guys think about my 4th or the 5th through 8th placings? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think I'm spot on? Let me know. Looking at the backside of the back double bicep here, again, this one, I feel like Max Charles is still going to be able to hold on to it, but honestly, my eyes actually go to Joe Mackey on this shot. I feel like he has just a better symmetry when it's coming down from that the Y taper, where a gentleman like Max Charles, it feels like it kind of flattens out here. Maybe it's how he's holding it, I'm not sure, but it does look like the lats are very high inserting and they just stop, and looks like there's some water being held here, maybe even potentially some fat that kind of hide that beautiful physique. Whereas you look at the rest of these competitors, tiny lower backs, tiny midsections, with adequate muscle tissue as well. So, and even Joe Mackey, like the glutes are growing into his lower back. So that's crazy to see. But again, I feel like this is a Max Charles / Joe Mackey show for the 5th through 8th. Joe Mackey could even jump up to maybe a 6th place. It's really hard to tell. And before we get into the dark horse picks for this show, looking at the lower body from the back, the glutes, the hamstrings, and the calves, again, I feel like it's speaking the same narrative for the most part, except that this is where a lot of people have criticized Max Charles. There's not a lot of a wow factor from back here. Whereas you look at someone like a Joe Mackey or even a Justin Mackey, crazy leg development, hamstring separation. The glute tie-in looks absolutely Ronnie-esque, where, I mean, the calves are a little bit lacking, but I mean, who loses a show from calves, you know? But I'd love to hear in the comment sections, what do you guys think about these, the lower body? Do you think that Max Charles's lower body from the back is going to be enough to get him knocked out from that 5th place spot? Let me know. All right, guys, now let's get into my dark horse picks. So Obviously, I feel like a lot of people have already know this. Phil Klahar has done very well in his very young competitive career already. A little bit older of a gentleman, but he's absolutely stacked. He's a taller gentleman, but still maintaining that beautiful X figure. The lats just look massive, massive chest. This is a great package from his 2020 Tampa Pro, where he placed 4th, and then at the New York Pro he placed 10th. So if he could bring this level of size and conditioning, he could really end all the way up in a place like maybe 4th or 5th. It's hard to tell because he's had those 2 different showings where he's placed 10th and he's also placed 4th. There's not a lot of consistency there. You could also say that the depth of the lineup could have affected it. If we're going to have that conversation, the lineup that we're going to have here in the Men's Open at the Chicago Pro is going to be heavy. It's going to be stacked, and the 212 is going to be stacked too. We're going to do that video next. But I feel that if Phil Klahar and his team over at RX Muscle and Species Nutrition with Dave Palumbo, if they can bring a package like this to the Chicago Pro, I feel like he could solidly challenge someone like a Max Charles for that 5th place spot. And another dark horse pick is going to be Brett Wilkins, one of the newer rising stars. He's placed not so great, right? So this was his pro debut, or this was his 212 showing, and then he switched over to the Open. He's put on a lot of muscle lately. It's going to be interesting to see how that translates into the Open class, especially at such a stacked lineup like the 2021 Wings of Strength Chicago Pro. I'd love to hear in the comment sections below what you guys think about Brett Wilkins. Do you think he's going to place well in the show? Do you think he has what it takes to knock out some of the potentially smaller competitors or some of the smaller names? Do you think he could probably get in that top 8? I definitely think it's possible. It's just really going to come down to, with a lot of these competitors, is you can have all the muscle in the world, but if you can't see the muscle, the judges can't judge it. So if the conditioning doesn't show up, I feel like the placings that they want aren't going to show up. So again, wondering how you guys feel about Brett Wilkins coming into the Chicago Pro. Let me know in the comment sections below. And my last dark horse pick could potentially shock that 4th through 8th placings is going to be Zach Merkel. So he actually beat out, like I said in the last video, make sure you check that out. He actually beat Nick Walker at the Nationals, the NPC Nationals in 2019, where Zach won his pro card. This is what he looked like then, and this is what he looks like now. I've heard through Fuad and his podcast that the chest could use some improvement. My eyes didn't point that out, but that's an interesting thought. It's an interesting perspective, but it really could be interesting to see where this guy places. If he comes in, if Zach comes in great conditioning, if he were to come in looking like this even, I feel like this could potentially beat out a Justin Mackey, could beat out a Joe Mackey. It could even beat out a lot of the smaller guys where he could land in that 4 through 8. But let me know down below. And that's going to do it for my prediction video for the Men's Open category at this year's 2021 Wings of Strength Chicago Pro. Like I said, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment sections below. What about 1 through 4? How do you feel about that one? Do you think there's going to be a shocker coming in there? Do you think Rolly Winkler isn't going to come in shape? Do you think anyone can actually beat Rolly Winkler at this year's Chicago Pro? And what about the 5 through 8? Was I spot on? Was I way off base? Let me know. Discuss in the comment sections below. But like I said, that'll do it for another episode on the Bodybuilding News Network, specifically another installment of Bodybuilding Today. I'm your host, Sanch. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed this style of content, and I'll see you in the next one.